Good evening. This is Dr. Mona Washington. I am here tonight with your midterm feedback. I cannot believe we are halfway through. It's been very busy. It's moving so quickly. I should be caught up on grading here very soon. Thank you so much for bearing with me. So what I want to do now is I want to go over the midterm feedback. Question 5 was a gauge type of question to understand, and hopefully you can hear me. I'll make sure I turn it up louder. To understand thus far what you have learned and how you plan to impact what you have learned. It's very important to gauge that because we can go through a course and at the end someone asks the question of what did you learn or how was the course, and you kind of are like, well, it was good, but okay, well, tell me what. Because this is the point. Yes, you're here on this educational journey to earn a degree, of course, but you want your courses excuse me, you want the information, you want the content to be applicable. I want you to know what you have learned and how will it look in the real world. That's really important in every class. Now, some classes like history and those things, which are what I call filler classes, you have to take them to complete your degree. But courses like this, communication and writing, these are things that you will forever use. So I think it's important for you to hone in on key points and keep them in the forefront. So when you have the opportunity to use them again, you will. Okay, so Dolan. Dolan talked about better listening, interpersonal skills, interpersonal communication, and to be able to use it in the work center. And he talked about the computer technology. And what I will tell you, Dolan, is the technology is going to be forever changing. And sometimes we just feel like we can't keep up. So make good use of YouTubes. Go back to the basics of all kinds of the computer technologies and things and how they work. Use the resources, the library and Wayland's online library, YouTube. Use that as a resource to ensure that you can stay abreast of those things. And good deal, definitely the better listening. The most neglected form of communication is listening. We are taught how to read, we are taught how to write, we are even taught how to speak. Toastmasters and other organizations, but we are not taught how to listen. And listening is so important. It's paramount. I'll tell you a quick story. I was conducting an interview for a part-time position not too long ago, and the applicant, when I was reviewing her resume, she looked more than qualified. It's a part-time position. But during the interview, she kept interrupting. And myself and the two other people who were on the panel would start to ask a question, and she would say, oh, I know, and answer the question or finish the person's sentence. Needless to say, she did not get the job. And here's the reason. You need to listen. You may think, oh, I know what you're going to say, but you really cannot. I mean, a person might have said this same thing a million times, but this one time they may not. They may say something different. And so it's important to listen. I think I said this, maybe not, but I'm a really good listener, such that people think, are you slow? And it's like, no, I'm not slow. I'm listening. And once I'm finished listening, I'm thinking about what you said and gathering my words. So if nothing else, we all can do a better job of listening. Julian, proofreading, listening, editing, and that whole down editing. I'm so glad that many of you mentioned the down editing. This is proper etiquette. And many of us are not using it. And so I challenge you all who may not have used the down editing or is not being used in your organization, I challenge you all just to start using it and see what happens. If you use it, no one is going to, I believe, be upset or chastise you for using it. And you might start a new trend. So Julian, continue with the down editing. Christopher, proofreading. These are things that he learned, the social media and how to prepare a message. You too, Christopher, for the social media, I suggest tutorials. A big social media that I think that may be underutilized is LinkedIn. And I would challenge you all to go and watch some tutorials on LinkedIn, not only on how to write a good and effective LinkedIn profile, but how to use it for networking, connections. Many organizations now are using LinkedIn as a free job site. So I think it's really paramount and advantageous for you to look at that as a resource. Some tutorials for LinkedIn and other social media as well, especially if you're in business. Cornelius talked about the 3x3 writing, the revision, and the email readability. I agree, Cornelius, who writes mostly police reports. I think that the revision will be noticed and appreciated in terms of ensuring, I know you are ensuring that the content is accurate, but ensuring that the readability is easy to understand, because people make assessments based on grammar and readability. I think that it will benefit you a lot. I think that it would definitely benefit you. And the use of wikis, I'm sure, will be appreciated in your work. I'm sure it will be. Jared talked about proofreading, sharing content, and being conversational. Learning how to interact and be conversational can increase your whole life, improve your whole life in terms of networking and building relationships. So that's a key part of how this will impact you positively. John talked about something he hadn't thought about, the nonverbals. And it's funny, I remember, excuse me, make sure you can hear me. I remember early in my military career, I met a person, and she and I are good friends now. We've been friends for years. But she said that she thought I was very unapproachable. And when I asked her why, she said, because I walked with my arms folded. And I did. And I don't really know what, but your arms being folded can be perceived as a person who is not open and unapproachable. So I learned that and no longer do that. So nonverbal cues are very, very prevalent, especially when you are dealing with non-native English speakers or non-native English, because in this country, things are seen very differently. When you go to other countries, nodding of the head, shaking hands with the left, all these different things matter. So understanding nonverbals is very important. It can go a long way in building your relationships, especially with those outside of your culture. Oh, know your audience. This is really good. Some other people talked about this, but I want to talk about this in terms of know your audience. We think about know your audience in terms of speaking, if you're giving a presentation, which is great. But I think that you can narrow that know your audience down in terms of relationships, your co-workers, your neighbors, parents, other parents that maybe your children are interacting with. Knowing your audience, knowing the things that you have in common, and maybe the things that you have that are differences. Knowing those things with your coworkers or whomever can help to build relationships, because you can focus on the things that you have in common, or even maybe discuss the things you don't have in common for conversational pieces. So knowing your audience is not only knowing your audience when you are preparing for a speech. Knowing your audience in terms of who you are interacting with can be advantageous as well. talked about social media. John talked about social media, and what I said was, yeah, social media and technology has and will continue to move forward, and we have to change with it. We have to change with it. We could spend a bunch of energy talking about it, the things that are wrong with it, but that's wasting time and energy. So what we need to do, in my opinion, in terms of how it will impact managers, because as baby boomers, I want to talk about this real quick. In the workplace now, we have something that we haven't had in a while. We have several generations in the workplace at the same time. We used to have right now we have the baby boomers, but before that, the golden years, you had one generation in the workforce at a particular time. And right now you have several. The baby boomers typically being the oldest, and then we have the millennials and the Xers and whatever else will be after that. But we, as I'm a baby boomer, have to know with the different generations that are in the workforce, because the baby boomers will eventually get smaller and smaller because life is going on, and so it'll be the millennials and the Xers and all those things. So we have to learn how to communicate with them, because it will be more of them than us. So just remember that. Aubrey talks about the revision of messages, listening skills. Oh, and Aubrey, I thought that was so cool. Aubrey talks about she has a 17-month-old daughter and a 2-month-old son, and she talked about listening, and even though she knows what her daughter wants, she wants to give her daughter the opportunity to get it out and to express. And I had an occasion to talk to a dear friend of mine. Her son was maybe 3 or 4, and he wasn't talking. And long story short, because she had created this environment where he didn't have to. So he's there, and she goes, "Oh, do you want juice? Oh, do you want this? Oh, do you want that?" And so he's shaking his head, and she would give it to him. So he got into the habit of not having to talk, because she knew the answers and would answer for him. And so, yes, Aubrey, you're doing a really good job by making sure that you allow your daughter the opportunity to speak and to speak and to learn to have her own voice. So kudos for you, Aubrey. Kudos for you. Evan talked about the 3x3, the redundancy and empty words, and it reminded me of what we used to think of using big words made us sound smart. But in business writing now, the expectation is short, simple words. And Evan talked about the down editing and now using it within the military environment. Great job. Nancy, proofreading, editing emails, and Nancy talks about no more emojis. She was using emojis at work and now feels like it may not be as professional as she would like. So she has decided not to use emojis at work. And I kind of would appreciate that. I think that's appropriate. Multitasking. Just recently read 2 articles about the non-benefit of multitasking. And so, Nancy in class, I think that we need to get away from thinking that when we multitask that it is being productive. Studies are showing that it is not. And I believe in communication, especially when we are listening. We need to not multitask. We need to stop and focus and pay attention and try to purposefully, intentionally ignore distractions. Brandeis, audience analysis, proofreading, and technology. And Brandeis Brandeis, I hope I'm saying it right. You know what I thought about when I read yours? Yes, about technology, but making sure that we are managing technology and not letting technology manage us in terms of using it in the ways that we want, in the ways that can be helpful, but not becoming slaves to the technology and thinking we cannot be productive without it. When I first moved back to Texas, my phone died. And I'd only been here a few weeks and I didn't know directions. And I didn't have a phone. And there are no pay phones anymore. Luckily, I had gas and was able to drive around and stop and ask questions. But, you know, that's just the nature of the beast in terms of now we are very dependent on certain things. Now, that case is different, but people who feel like they cannot be without Facebook or a phone or the internet, where you really can, because there are people that are living productive lives. Probably not in the U.S. I'm just kidding. But the bottom line is you manage technology and not let it manage you. Amanda talked about emails, proofreading, better listening, and using technology within business. Using technology within business. Patricia, I loved your post. Patricia talked about, she gave an in-depth description of her work life prior to the big boom of technology. She talked about how she and the manager communicated and how they wrote letters and they mailed and how she was not involved, but saw this transformation from what it was to now. And kudos to you, because you see the transformation. You're not spending time talking about the good old days and how better it was, and maybe it was and maybe it wasn't, but that you see it and that you're on the bus. That's the way to be. You have to be on the bus. Oh, I love what you said too about the critical thinking and that example you gave of the meal prep. When I finish this call, I'm going to finish my meal prep from the week because it's very important. Very important. Alma talked about listening skills, being biased, and net etiquette rules. Alma, let me just tell you something. I think this is one of the best things that you can do when it comes to listening. If you do not have the time to focus or to give your full attention to the person, because Alma talked about sometimes fake listening, like she's not really listening. If you don't have the time, say it. Hey, you know what, John, I really would love to hear this, or would really love to have this conversation with you, or to hear about XYZ, or to find the solution. But right now, I don't have the time. Can we talk at XYZ? Or you tell the person, I only have 10 minutes. Do you think we can have this conversation in 10 minutes, or do you want to have it later? Be honest. Be honest and tell people what you have time for and what you don't. I think that is not so much helping your listening skills, but it's a tool that you can use to help you be better prepared to listen. April says that she's a good listener. Great. She talks about revising and the rational and emotional appeals. That's what she's going to use. Monica talks about email and proofreading. And Monica talks about her tone. And this is hands down across the board a big deal for a lot of us. Because this is the thing. When you are reading an email or you are writing it, you have a tone in your head. But the person that is receiving it might not necessarily have the same tone. And I would bet more often than not, that person, the receiver, is not having the same tone that maybe you intended. And then Bobby Bobby talked about his listening skills and how his listening skills have helped him. Bobby works in hospital maintenance, and he says that his listening skills now, by listening to his customers and things that he wants, he can see the improvement. He's been on a job 6 months, and already his listening skills and revising the emails, he says he can see how that is impacting him positively already. Sorry. Well, I wanted to tell you all, great job. My desire is I will have a extra credit opportunity video posted, so be on the lookout for that. And this Blackboard, for some reason, Blackboard does not post things sometimes in order. And Blackboard will have 2 pages. You'll have 2 pages, so make sure you look at the bottom to be able to click to the next page and look through the discussion threads, because it might not be in order. And I don't know why, it does not go in order all the time. Okay? I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Until next time, I will post the video. You know what to do. Respond. Thanks. Bye.